Welcome! This video is the second in a series called Market Access for Digital Entrepreneurs, brought to you by Seda, the Small Enterprise Development Agency, with support from the European Union. In this series, we have assembled a range of entrepreneurs, industry experts, and subject specialists to share their insights and experience from different angles about commercializing startup digital products and services. These videos are first and foremost for entrepreneurs, but we hope they will also be of interest to incubator and hub managers and business advisors. In this webinar, we will take a look at the mobile app industry in South Africa. To tap into this market locally and internationally, you need to understand it, where the opportunities are, and how to take advantage of them. As your success is determined by your understanding of the market, your product's competitiveness, and the effectiveness of your sales methodology. It's a high-growth sector with rapidly growing use cases, so it's fair to say that if there isn't, there should definitely be an app for your business. Let's begin.
When I looked at the topic that will be discussed this morning, and it's mobile apps, I became quite excited because there's such a lot that we can do with mobile apps. I think anything that we do, on our phones, you need an app for. And applications has become something that we cannot live without, especially when we look at some of the, important apps such as your banking app and others that you might have on your phone. Now, ladies and gentlemen, that I would like to then just start with this morning and say good morning to each and every one of you, and welcome to the session on mobile applications this morning. As an organization, Seda, specifically looking at our Seda technology program, we are very excited. And when this topic came up, it was something that we had discussed, and we had said, you know what, being in the space of entrepreneurship and small business development, how do we make sure that our SMMEs, that's in the mobile app design, and how do we then ensure that they are able to come on board and also participate within this? We've got incubators, part of the incubation process where we've got incubators that is within, the space of ICT, and they also create mobile apps. And they then would be here this morning to also just listen and make sure that there's something that they can take away for the clients that they service. I also then had a look at the panel discussions and who's going to be on the panels, and I would like to just welcome each and every panel member this morning and say I'm looking forward to the discussion and what we're going to just discuss and really having conversation about mobile applications and where we come from in terms of mobile applications. I have written something, so I would just like to go through that as well before I hand it back over. So a mobile application, which is also referred to as a mobile app or simply just an app, is a computer program or software application designed to run on a mobile device. Such as the one that I'm using this morning. It's supposed to run on a phone, a tablet, or a watch. Now, we've all seen, some of the watches that we have where we can run mobile apps. In fact, nowadays, you can even, pay with your watch for your goods that you purchase in store. Mobile applications often stand in contrast to desktop applications, which are designed to run on desktop computers, and web applications which run in mobile web browsers rather than directly on the mobile device. So we've seen how we're moving away from, what's happening on desktop computers, and it's literally just becoming smaller and smaller, but with so much functionality. And I think that's what we are interested in, to be able to use apps that we have to the benefit of the work that we need to do, be it, in the work that we do as government, be it in the work that's being done in the private sector, etc. But anybody, doing work would be able to then have an app where we could, do the work Imagine if we could have an app as Seda where our entrepreneurs could come on, they can register, they can have access to some of the services that we offer, and with no interaction from our side. We've seen that currently we are servicing just over 70,000 entrepreneurs a year, of which only about 12 to 15,000 are able to get some of the interventions that we do. Now, if we can have some of the services that we do, applications for that, and people are able to assist and help themselves with, self-help apps, how better for us, because then we've got such a bigger reach in terms of what we want to achieve as an organization. Once again, the ecosystem development, South Africa or EDSE, thank you so much for your participation. Thank you for leading and making sure that these conversations happen on the platform. I think that for me, I am excited. I would just like to sit back today. I've got time to, be in the session and really engage and see what is on offer. I've looked at the biographies of each and every one of the different speakers that will be coming on, and I must say you are in for a treat. Once again, Seda as an organization would like to say that we are absolutely for the development and for the benefit of SMMEs, especially when it comes to technology, because we've seen what technology can do. We've spoken about big data, we've spoken about Internet of Things, machine learning, etc., and how all of these things could potentially assist us in doing and delivering our work better. Robots, robotics, etc. And mobile apps is no different. So I believe that with the discussion, we would be able to then go into detail in terms of what kind of mobile apps we have and what could potentially come out of those mobile apps. And I believe that as Seda and the EDSE, this is something that we can take forward, and we can look at how best we implement it in the work that we do on a daily basis.
For the individual who has an app idea, my very first slide is for you. It's vision without action is a daydream. And what I'm really hoping you will derive from this presentation is a few steps on how to quickly put a prototype together. As someone who has been servicing entrepreneurs for the last couple of years, one of the biggest pitfalls I've seen is, one, people don't tend to prototype. They want to build their entire project before they've even launched. And two, they don't have a tendency to bring along the actual end user through the entire process. We'll talk about that a little bit more throughout the process. I'm Hayley Gray. I am the founder of Cut to Code. This is not my first startup. My first startup I had created in 2012. It was incorporated with a co-founder, but I built my very first product in 2010. It was a CRM solution, which we sold to Diageo and Brad House. I was really very blessed to be working inside of an agency where someone was really supporting or driving my vision. And that same client was also my boss at the time, who bought all of my software. It led me to move to New York and work with different clients. I've built loads of different technology products and businesses over the years. I eventually exited Forge Technologies and dissolved my partnership with my then business partner and started Cut to Code, which now has launched 3 different products and now becoming 3 different businesses. Cut to Code is turning into what we call a holding company now, purely because we don't want to keep building custom software any longer. We want to focus on the products. And so I speak to you today from the perspective, not only from someone who has built these products, I also speak to you from the perspective of the entrepreneur, being inundated with information, not knowing where to start, looking at all of the tools that exist for free online, wanting to do everything myself, from building, ideating, putting it into the market, go-to-market strategy, and pretty much exhausting myself. There are some really great tools that exist for you to build a proof of concept, which I think, in my opinion, is very important to put into the market to validate your idea. And when you start validating your idea, it means that you start working with your end user from the start. I'm just quickly going to go through the ideation phase. When we work with entrepreneurs or clients, this is how we pretty much work with them. We go through an ideation phase and we ask them what their product is really going to do. Are you very clear on what its features are going to be? How is it going to improve the lives of the people you're going to serve? There's a lot of technology that already exists out there. That does not mean that there isn't room for yours, but you need to understand what your differentiator is going to be and why someone is going to hold your technology on their mobile device. Colin said something really interesting in his intro, and he spoke about having the mobile device with him. For me, that is really about mobility. It's important when you're creating this particular kind of application that you're thinking about where is this use case? What is it that you're building for? There are loads of different kind of applications. Sometimes you don't actually need to be building a mobile app that happens to be native to the device. There are all sorts of things like web apps, no-code apps, etc., which can also be built. But I think the very first thing to start with is what is it that you're trying to solve? What is the problem statement? And from that is what will your app do? Who will it serve? And why will they use it? Do you understand what your market fit is? Have you actually gone in and spoken to your target audience? Have you tried to find them? You can distill the target audience even further. And what exactly is your competitive advantage? It's important to understand what it is that you're solving for, who your target audience is, because it cannot be everyone. It will be too broad. And when you understand that from the start, it will make your go-to-market strategy a lot smoother, because one of the elements we often don't realize is we are going to market when we're actually even building. When your end user is involved in your ideation phase, in your product build, in the perfections of what it is that you're doing, in the testing, in building out your use cases, it makes it a lot easier for you to start building out your target audience. So once all of your thinking has been done, it's also really important to think about user experience design. I'm very excited for our very first panel. We have Sabiha, who is an expert in UX and in coding. So I'm quite interested for you to understand and hear what it is that she has to say during that panel. But as someone who has been building software for a while, one of the things that I see clients not understanding often is the user experience design. It is very different from actual graphic design. And I'll show you this really quick little image that explains it really well. We always have, as entrepreneurs, we have a vision for what it is that we're wanting to create. We have an intended idea of what it is that something needs to look like, how it needs to work, etc. But the minute you put a user into something, they have a journey. There are certain expectations that they feel are important in order to make the product be valuable for them to have that product or that app sit on their home page of their mobile device. That is clear, important, valuable real estate for you to live on inside of the environment. A banking app, for instance, is really something that would live in that environment very easily because it's something that someone uses every day. I'm sure for anyone on this call, WhatsApp might be that element, right? It's an important tool that you're probably using day in and day out. If you're not using WhatsApp, probably Telegram. But it's a tool that you're using to communicate with people on a daily basis. So it's important to take your end user's experience and their needs into account when you are designing your product. And that's one of the reasons why the end user is so important from the very beginning of your ideation phase. When you're validating your idea, onboarding and engaging your end user, the moment you can articulate your idea is imperative. And you don't have to be the engineer to build your app. I don't come from an engineering background, but I learned how to code. So, even though I don't code inside of the business at all. Please don't think that I am the one who is building our platforms. What I do know, however, is how to use no code and low code tools, and I can find my way around there. There are loads of entrepreneurs with fantastic and great ideas. That does not mean that you shouldn't be getting your ideas out there. And I understand that there are definitely businesses that have huge overheads. Working with engineers, the industry is very broad, right? So when we're looking at our skills, we're looking at skills all the way from someone who is designing, someone who's doing what we call front end, back end integration. There are multiple languages that are also used for building different kinds of cases as we progress through the technology sector. You may not need a particular engineer, and you might not have the knowledge on how to find the correct engineer. The most important, I think that could solve your problem is to build a prototype. When you don't have any budget, I think finding great forums, very much like Geek Culture, for instance. Mixo, who will also be on the next panel, will be discussing engaging with even with Seda, who have worked with these different companies, looking at where these resources exist and can assist you in helping you to build a prototype is really important. The other element is to work with a freelancer and find the right resources. Of course, you may be very sensitive to sharing your idea with just anyone. It's also understandable. When we get into the panels, we can dive into this more deeply. But the other element would also be to look at no-code platforms and essentially pull your prototype together. And then the last element that I personally feel is really important is engaging with other engineers and finding co-founders who actually come from engineering backgrounds. This is one of the elements that frustrates me quite a lot in the startup community. I find so many fantastic entrepreneurial ideas with individuals who possibly come from a business background, who come from design background, sales backgrounds. And realistically, these are the people who are walking around noticing problems that need to be solved. And if there are any engineers on this call, please forgive me for saying this, and we can get into a deep discussion about it. But I find most of the engineers that I've worked with throughout my life are the individuals who are deeply into the code. They're deeply making a product work, not necessarily the individuals who are diving into communities, trying to understand what the problems are. And so realistically, I don't find many co-founder engineers, which I find quite frustrating. I think we also really need to see loads more co-founder engineers working with individuals with great ideas, because a co-founder engineer does not necessarily have to be inside of your business 24/7. Once your technology is built, it's important to onboard your client and keep moving forward. So I hope that answers your question and we can discuss it a little bit more. But once again, just going back to the slide, validating your idea is really important. It's so important to, once you can articulate the idea, to start speaking to the people that you think may very well use your product. I've seen often many entrepreneurs building out their products, but not really involving an end user until the very last moment. And that is a big mistake, because what happens is each of us on this call, we have our own lived experiences. We all have different experiences, different perspectives. And our perspectives inform how we act. It also informs what it is that we do, how we see the world, and what it is that we build. So often when we build technology, we're building from our perspective. And so it's really important to gain the perspective of the end user that you may be wanting to serve, because the way in which you might want to serve might not necessarily be the way in which they want to be served. Because when you're walking into speaking with a freelance engineer and a software business, working with a designer, you need to be able to clearly articulate what it is that you're wanting to build. And it's so important to have that kind of documentation, even if it is you taking a pen and scribbling what we call wireframes and just drawing out what you think should be happening where, because it enables the individual to interpret what it is that you are envisioning. A lot can get lost in translation when you're building software, and it's a very expensive lesson that you do not want to have as you're building your software. Let's proceed. Some of the tools that I like to use, particularly for entrepreneurs, we don't particularly use these kind of tools for our corporates, but I find that these tools are really good at helping individuals to put their vision onto paper. Cuckoo is really great to kind of build out wireframes. If you don't know technology and you're not tech savvy, I don't suggest that you use this. Pen and paper is your friend. A whiteboard is your friend. Drawing out your entire process, talking through what it is that you think you're wanting to happen page for page is really, really good. InVision and Canva. I'm sure all of you probably know Canva. But Canva, outside of the design process, if you happen to go through any of their presentation documents, it will give you a lot of food for thought. It really gives you an idea of what are the questions that you need to be answering when you're actually building your software or when you're building your product. Remember, your software is not your product. Is not your business, sorry. Your software is not your business. There will be so many other elements that make your business so important. The software is a vehicle to get what it is that you are wanting to sell into the hands of the end user. Project management tools that I always suggest for entrepreneurs, because it's super easy to use and it's not really, it's not very heavy on connection, are things like Trello, Toggle, and Asana. And these are also really important. If you choose to start working with a company or a freelancer, you need to be able to see where people are. This creates a sense of transparency. It will allow you to understand how your product is broken up into different pieces and when you need to action various things. It gives you the opportunity to keep a handle on everything. No-code tools. This is my favorite thing, because anyone can use this. I personally love bubble.io, and I've used this with many clients who have walked through our door and immediately said to me, I have an app idea, I don't have any budget. And the very first thing I've said was, okay, great thing. Unfortunately, as a business, we have got very big overheads that we need to look after. However, it doesn't mean that we want to abandon you. We want to make sure that you have the business canvas, do the thinking, be able to share what it is that you're wanting to build. And bubble.io is a great tool to actually envision what it is that you're wanting to build, particularly if you're building a mobile application. AppGyver is also really good. You can use something for drag and drop. I've just put the slide in here. Product mockups are really important. I love working with designers. The minute I usually ideate an idea, I take pen to paper and I draw. Once I'm done drawing, this is when I particularly pull things into something like Cuckoo, and I work with really fantastic designers who can start doing mockups for me. I find that coding should never be started until you're very clear on what that design process is. Working with a really great user experience expert, for me personally, I find is really important, because even when you're just at this particular stage, when you've just got your product mockups and you've not even built your prototype, this is a really good opportunity to start speaking to end users, because you are visually representing what it is that you're wanting to achieve. It's at this point where your end user will be able to say to you, oh yeah, okay, I really like how this works. This makes sense to me. You can even create things like a dumb prototype, and that's literally pulling all of these kind of images into the screen of your mobile device, and allows you to scroll and to click on things. The functionality and features may not be working, but it helps the human eye to understand what it is that they're going to be getting. And it's at this particular point that I usually call on feedback and pull different people into product groups. This is the business canvas that I'm sure that every single one of you have worked with. It is really important. We don't do anything without this business canvas. Just very quickly, I'll go through the fact that you are defining your problem. What are your problem? What are the problems that people are facing? What are their 3 frustrations? What is your solution? How are you going to solve it? Are there existing alternatives? There are always some degree of an existing alternative. We are living in a world where we are consuming so much technology. Make sure that you look at that existing alternative, because it is really important. It doesn't matter that you are competition in the environment. Competition is a very good thing. But make sure you understand what the others are doing, not to the degree of following every single element of it, because you also need to focus solely on what it is that you are creating, but be aware of what's in the market already. What are your key metrics? Key metrics is something that I often see people not creating. And it's really important, because how are you going to know that you have achieved what it is that you're wanting to achieve? It's really important to create the metrics for your build from start to finish. And when I say start to finish, I don't mean that you build your prototype and you're done. You're going to be on a path of continuous building, which means that you need to understand what your continuous metric is going to be. Unique value proposition. I'm sure that this is not something new to anyone. What is your unfair advantage? What is the thing that you are going to do that makes you, that takes you ahead of the pack? Early adopters, this is really, really very critical. And I say this throughout this presentation, because who exactly is it that you're building for and why? Create, build, and optimize. This is circular. So it means that you're continually creating, you're continually building, and you are continually optimizing. You're not building a product, putting it out in the market and leaving it there. I implore you to continually request feedback from your end users and take that into account. I'm sure that everyone on this call probably uses things like WhatsApp, Facebook, Instagram, Clubhouse. You'll notice that there are continuous optimizations that are happening. The platform doesn't sit to exist only once. And even with any software you're going to be creating, it is a living, breathing thing. It's going to continue on. It will always need some form of maintenance, some form of optimization. It will need your attention. And look at building out your product roadmap. This is really, this is quite interesting. It's something that inside of our business, we keep on every single product. And it's so that we don't forget what those features are. They change based on the feedback that we enlist from our users. Now, the most important aspect of this particular webinar today, I wanted to talk a lot about go-to-market strategy. Today, we have a great panel with Crystal Hastings, who is the head of marketing for FinChatbot. A really great case study for us to look at, because they have grown into different markets and she has built out their brand identity in a wonderful way. We also have Marlon, who is fantastic and an expert at sales funnel generation and lead generation. So depending on the kind of businesses that you're growing, really important conversations for us to have. And then also Kovani. Kovani is a social media expert and she's the founder of Boss Babe. So we can talk about how social media is going to help you get your product into the market and how you're going to keep creating a bigger product that scales. So go-to-market is the most important aspect that I wanted to talk about this. Yes, I understand it might not be the most important aspect when you're building a product, because of course you can't go to market if you don't have a product, right? But the problem here is I see so many people building out their products over the years who have never thought about a go-to-market strategy. Many people have this great vision, fantastic ideas, and I've seen some really incredible ideas over the years. But what's happened is people have spent all of their attention on building their software and no attention on going to market. And this is a mistake because you're going to market while you're building. And if you are involving your end user inside of your build, that is going to be really critical. Your single most valuable asset when you're onboarding a new user is your existing user. So ensure that as you're building, those early adopters, those people who are going through the use cases and testing your product with you are the people who are going to be your ambassadors. They are also going to be the individuals who will help you to recruit the next set of users and so on and so on. It's really important, but certain key elements. And I've placed this page here purely from the perspective of having a mobile app. This may be very different if you're building a software solution that is not a mobile app, an app solution. And there are endless amounts of elements that I could add here, but I leave that for our discussion inside of the panels. But very important is your app's landing page. If you're building an app and you don't have an app's landing page, how is anyone going to find you? It's really important that your app landing page is optimized for SEO. Work with someone who knows what they're doing here. The same thing applies with your app store optimizations. The way you're naming your app, the introduction to your application, all of the copy that gets listed beforehand, the images that you're listing inside of the app store when you're loading your app up. These are all really important elements to get the app seen. Social media marketing is really important. And I'm going to actually ask both Crystal and Kovani to give us their insights into how they feel we could be talking more about the applications via social media in order to get people onto the application. Influencer marketing, paid acquisition campaigns and retention campaigns. I'm sure you all know about paid acquisition campaigns. It's really as simple as doing a paid campaign on different platforms. However, it's critical for you to understand who your audience is, who it is that you're trying to draw into your application, and the same thing applies with influencer marketing. Retention campaigns are really important because once you've got a user on your platform, it's really important to keep them there. Those individuals will be the ambassadors for your platform and they will draw more users into your platform. That being said, as you're going through the user experience design of your build, the onboarding strategy or the shareability of your application is something that you need to think about too. And this is why it's so important to work with really great resources. Community is everything. It's so important because this is where you're going to find people who are going to support you, who understand you, and you will find your co-founders in this kind of environment. And it's also going to be the space where people will share what has worked for them and what has not worked for them. So I'm going to pull that question into our first panel, because I'm sure that Mixo, who actually drives a community of individuals, both entrepreneurs and engineers, will be able to answer that really smartly.
It can either go very well or very badly. Like I always say, like co-founders is like, choosing who you go with. You have to be very careful that you have the right vision and the right fit. I think there's a lot of discussion that needs to happen before sort of any contracts get signed or any sort of commercialization. What I found is a lot of friends actually work really well together. So they find, like, depending on who you are you the tech founder or are you the, business founder? So those two usually conflict with each other, but they do eventually work well together. So yeah, that's something that I find is actually finding someone you get along with, someone you want to see and talk to every single day, and then, you know, coming to an understanding of what you actually want to achieve together.
So my first co-founder was someone I was in a relationship with. And I learned like in a very tough way that contracts are so important. So I agree with you with regards to working with each other, working with people that you really enjoy working with. But I think what's really important too is to be very well aligned with someone's values and their character, because this environment of being in a startup, it's, you know, you push to your limits, right?
Yeah.
So what ends up happening is you see personality traits that you did not expect because you're under pressure. And so I think it's one, very important to know yourself, and two, contracting. Contracting is so important. I'm waiting for someone to start a business that is literally like coaching for founders.
Yes.
Like coaching or like relationship management for founders. I'm literally waiting for that to kind of happen because I see such a need for that. And it's one of the, yeah, exactly. And it's one of the reasons why I chose in my second startup to not take on any co-founders, but take on shareholders instead. Yeah.
I think co-founders, for me, I think they're important, but it's very important to find the right co-founder. It's very important to be aligned. It's very important to share the same vision as the co-founder. So you hear a lot of entrepreneurs say your relationship with your co-founder is like your romantic relationship with your partner, so there's a lot of things that go in from communication. There's a lot of things that you both take on your shoulders and sacrifice on both ends as well. So it needs to be someone that understands that, someone that is willing to go the miles as well. So having that kind of co-founder is quite important.
I find that when you're building a tech product, it's really important to have someone alongside that is going to kind of help you to pivot, to keep moving forward, because if you tend to not have anyone in the core team that is an engineer and your product is technology, you're literally spending your resources externally constantly, right? Like you're spending cash to build. Whereas when you have an engineer as part of the team, and in fact that engineer doesn't even have to be a co-founder. I mean, you could do like a revenue share agreement if you didn't want to have a co-founder. You could have some form of vested equity if you wanted, really. I think that there are ways to protect that. How important do you guys think that is?
Okay, I will go from my experience. So I've had both the great of having a technical co-founder and the awful of it in sort of my own products that I've founded. The one side of it is that you work really well together because you can make decisions and there's not a ton of money that you need to throw at it, especially if they can code and they are actually doing the work. The other side of it is that if they're very passionate about what they do, they want to do it in the best way. And sometimes, especially in the early stages, it needs to be dirty. It needs to be quick and easy. You need to get to market. And I found that on one product, we literally spent like a year trying to get to market because he was obsessed around how good the code looked. No one is seeing the code of this. And then I had another technical co-founder who was both a developer and had a very good design eye. So we actually got a very beautiful product out like in a month. And we've been iterating on that like for the past 2 years, and because he develops and I design and I do the business, we work really well without needing other resources and without needing funding to actually, get to a monetization strategy, which is usually the issue because you're not making money right out the gate.
Yeah, I agree. What about you, Mishu?
Yeah, so I think I've been blessed with an amazing co-founder who's technical, but is also very strategic as well. So that helps a lot in terms of, and fortunate as well, he's very conscious about time, conscious about, spending time on certain things that are not important and spending time on things that are important. So that comes in very, very handy. So I really think a balance in your co-founding establishment is quite important, but also you should be able to leverage from each other. So I think I've experienced the positive side. Yes, sometimes you think, okay, maybe we shouldn't be taking too long with this and this from a technical front, but you also get to learn from them. So that's another thing that I admire about having a technical co-founder. We can go to meetings and I know I can speak from my end, but we will be in sync in a sense that he will know when to jump in from his side, from a technical side, and you leverage on that. But also you don't just leverage, you learn from the process of working with a technical person that, okay, so this means that, this is how you do. So you also understand in a way, look, ideally how long certain things will take, and that kind of helps quite a lot. We've moved also away from developing software for clients. We do it here and there, but it's not our core thing that we do, because we've built a very strong community of technical people spread across the country, who we feel that it's always great that when such opportunities come, we're able to distribute and share that content and those opportunities with them. So that's the community we've built through Geek Culture, which has got over 10,000 young people spread across the country, with majority coming from university. And we're also building a pipeline from high school, so getting the young people to learn and understand the process of software development. The budget one, I prefer to just break people's hearts right from the onset, because I think thing is, people, it's a very, very topic that is not spoken a lot about. And I think the technical community does not share with the non-technical community that much information. So, someone might come and think an app is going to cost 5,000 Rand or 10,000 Rand. And then you sort of like tell them, okay, that's not how it's going to be. So you kind of like put a number that they will then need to go back and decide, okay, is this what I really want to do or not? So sometimes we even have to move them from, do you really need an app? Maybe you don't need an app right now. So before you even go and set up meetings after meetings, maybe you need to decide whether, do I need an app right now? I think when I jumped in, I heard you talk about, going to market and testing with your users. And that's a great start, where maybe you don't need an app, you just need a web app. Maybe you just need a website just to attract and see if there's actually an interest before you actually go and spend a lot of money on building apps, because apps are quite costly. And sometimes you need to split it between developing for Android, developing for iOS. That's like twice the cost, so those are things that we prefer to just let them know from the onset that, listen, this is ideally what you're looking at. And then we sort of like identify a few people from our community. And then even then we break down and say, this one is probably the most expensive one, but you're guaranteed of what you're looking for. This one is not so expensive, but they're also good with what they're doing. So we sort of like break down the people that we have in the community for them, so that they can, decide where their pockets says. So you don't want to judge that part for them. So they decide, okay, it's okay, I do have the budget. Give me the best of the best, or maybe my budget is not really there, but you've kind of like told them that because of the amount you're speaking of, chances are this is what you might get, so at least you put them, you make them aware of that.
I'm in the opposite space. I'm obsessed with helping first-time founders. That's my passion. I'm a very people over profits right now. Later on, maybe I'll become a better business person. So our entire sort of philosophy is helping like entrepreneurs go from a dream idea to their first paying customer. And we focus a lot more on understanding the problem than caring about what the solution should be. Because a lot of times they come and they say, you know what, I want an app, or I want it to do this, or I want the Uber for this, or the Netflix for that. And I'm like, fantastic, that is your frame of reference. And cool, let's actually just step back and actually just talk. That's something I love doing, is actually just talking to them. Where does this problem come from? Why are you trying to solve this? Why are you so passionate about it? If this is not your actual business, which it isn't 90% of the time, because they have no idea how they're going to make money out of it either. I try and encourage them and help guide them through between like a 4 to 8 week process of actually testing out this concept before investing massively into it. And generally, like, those budgets are between 10 to 30,000. And if you don't have that even to start, then I don't think you're very serious about what you're doing, or you're not yet at a point where, you know, we can like eat like at the end of the day, you know, like we also need to be compensated for the time that we put in. But it's more about just helping frame the problem and helping test out things that are literally cheap or free. So I sometimes say, like, even a website can be too much. Like a Google form can service a lot of your needs to see whether people would actually pay for the service, or is this actually a problem? And focusing a lot more on problem definition and design of a solution, and then helping them to get funding, essentially. Because if they also can't see their dream, if they can't see what you're actually going to give them, they're not confident enough to spend their own money, because most of the time it is their own money. So when you tell them, like I don't even try and tell them what it's going to cost. I'm just like, okay, let's start here. What's your budget? Do you have at least 10,000? We can help you get from A to here to B. Because a mobile app is, minimum like 500,000, because there's so much you need to do, and testing and resources that go into that. And it takes so much of time. And I'm like, why do you want to go through this entire process when you don't even know what problem you're solving yet?
Personally, one of the most important skilled resources that I have onboarded into a vested equity deal in one of my projects is someone who comes from marketing and sales. But that's also because of the way we are situated as a team. Like our skills as a team are design, building, technology. We're not the good people who sell. So we've actually, Sabia, have you just gone into load shedding?
Everywhere. Location today. Sorry, guys.
No, it's okay. So yes, I think you make a very good point. I think what's really important to is identify what your business needs and to find those individuals.
Our community is for us to put the breakdown, is that those that are really entering the space. So there's things that happen in terms of them learning. So I'll give you an example. We ran an app development academy with MTN earlier on this year. We did it also last year. And its main aim was really to introduce young people to the world of app development. They might have some sort of software development skill sets, but this was more geared towards app development. And through that, parts of it is you don't just learn the fundamentals, but you learn things like design, you learn things like doing prototypes and mock-ups. So when it comes to, we also had a hackathon after that. And the hackathon was really to say all the things that you've learned, apply it in a form of come up with that prototype, that at least you can show that this is the learnings. So same thing with the community. There are those that work on prototypes. There are those that are doing replicates of Uber, Airbnb, really designing, redeveloping all those different platforms. So prototyping is actually quite great and quite good. It also helps with, instead of going too far with the idea, you get to see where things are going. You get to, you probably hear this from me quite a lot, but you get to use that prototype to, showcase what the idea looks like, but also to start testing properly with the users, so they can help you build extra features. They can help you build different features that you didn't think of. So prototyping is definitely quite key. And we do encourage our community to say, okay, try not to spend the whole year, 6 months trying to perfect it, because, well, that's technical people. They love perfecting their work, Try at least to have a prototype, test it and get feedback, and then change, improve on it as you go. And those, I believe, some of the best products are done in that manner.
But I'm just wondering if we're missing a beat in not training our students to use things like AppGyver and Bubble.io and all of these other platforms to actually create prototypes, because you're not necessarily going to use your prototype as the product and put that into the market, but you are going to use it to validate. So that's more a comment than a question, but what do you guys think about that?
So that's something we focus on a lot in sort of the community I run, which is more design focused and business design focused and development. Because I find that people think the first resource they need is a software developer to bring their idea to life. And that person is just going to do 90% of the time what you tell them to do. They're never going to advise you in the way of doing things. And they're going to focus more on asking you, should we use Angular? Should we use React? And you're sitting there and you're like, I don't know what any of this does or doesn't do. I can't make these decisions. And we use a tool called Figma. So it's not a functional tool like Bubble, but it is so quick. Like I literally can sit with a client for 4 hours and go from idea to like 2 or 3 flows that they can then, we prototype, and you can literally, you yourself see if this is what you want and put it in front of the people you are asking for money from. So both your customers, investors, businesses. And that's how I found it's actually a longer journey with my clients, but that's why we take on very select clients and walk that journey with them, because entrepreneurs need that hand holding. Just start, like stop waiting for perfect time, stop waiting for all the money. There's so much you can do yourself and you can actually learn to do yourself. There's so many resources online. Reach out and actually try it yourself. Try and understand your own concept. Try and sketch it out. You have a pen and a paper. That's a really great place to start. You use apps and websites every single day. You know what a button looks like. You know what an input field looks like. Draw it out and see and make your own, show yourself that vision, because then you're going to save whoever you work with, whichever resources you hire, you're going to save them so much of time trying to like get into your mind and understand what's happening in there. Yeah, and don't wait for the $1 million before you start, because so many ideas I feel are dying silently in people's hearts and minds because they feel scared, like they're not the right people to do this, or that lack of confidence just because they're seeing things happening and they're like, I don't know how to get from here to there. Reach out to people like me, for example. That's my mission that I'm on, is helping entrepreneurs actually get from that idea to someone that's willing to pay you for that idea.
So she touched on a very important part, which I was going to say as well. One of your most important resources is a pen and paper. Just take that, draw the flow of how you see things happening. It makes life easier when you're going to approach a developer or someone that you want them to build for you, because you're no longer just telling them your idea. You can sort of like showing them what you're thinking, that if ideally I press this button, this must happen. So it makes life easier. They can then come in and say, well, maybe let's move this and maybe let's do that. Then you can go to different tools that are free and you can start doing your own prototyping. It helps quite a lot. The simple one that I really like, it's not necessarily app development, but a bit of design. Canva is one. People tend to miss out on opportunities there where you can do a couple of things on your own for starters. As you said, don't wait to find the right people. Don't wait to get that kind of investment. And I think one thing that I've picked up with anything app development is research. So great, you want to be the Uber of this and this, but first check, is there anything that's like what you're building? What makes it different? And what makes your solution different? How are you going to do yours different? There's things that you can steal from that idea. There's things that you can actually come up in a different manner. So always do your research, look at around what's around you. Ideas are exactly that, ideas. The most important thing is, what do you do with that idea? When you start implementing it, that's what makes you stand out. So focus on doing your prototyping, and also do as much research as possible.
Thank you so much, Mishu and Sophia. It's been great chatting to the both of you. I'm so glad to be able to share the stage with you, and I really hope that we create more of an integrated community. I think that what the both of you are doing where your work is concerned is so important, and everyone on this call can benefit from your skills and your knowledge.
It's a very different place marketing a startup. You need to use a very different approach because you don't have the huge budgets that these big corporates have with all their massive ad campaigns, and they've got 50 people in their marketing departments putting out crazy amounts of socials and content and everything. So it's definitely a very different space and a very different journey. So FinChatbot's been going for almost 5 years now. As Haley mentioned, we built our own software, and we work with large corporates offering conversational AI solutions. And it very much was, starting off, we had little to no budget, and literally it's pretty much no budget, and saying, okay, great, we've got this offering, we know it adds value, but how are we going to build the brand? And that's kind of your starting point.
I think the power of social media is, truly amazing. It's changed my life. And when I say this, people sometimes jump back, but it really has, because the connections that I've, made and the people that I've gotten to cross paths with are truly, truly amazing. So I think for me, it would definitely be a strategy of social media together with potentially using influencers. I see a lot of big brands using influencers to put out very much what you said, so new mobile apps that are coming into play or new websites that are coming into play. And it seems like they're getting a lot of traction with that kind of strategy. But from my perspective, I think, the combination of using influencers together with just a powerful social media strategy is really the sweet spot, if I can put it that way. Yeah,
I totally agree with that. With many businesses that I've spoken to, that just maybe they want to start up a new product, or they're not really sure who that market, who's really the product market fit, how to actually get it out there. But Facebook is an awesome place to go into groups, find the right sort of people, community of people, and that would kind of fit. And through that, conversing with people, you start to get a good understanding. You can speak to people, connect with them, ask them questions, and from there you start to build pretty much a good idea of who that right customer is. And then from there you can really start to develop. One other thing we did is Facebook groups are really, they're especially at the moment, they're working quite well. So if you can build a little community within that and use that to start to get good information about your product, get back and forth, you can then start to build from there, and get to market.
Sorry, just to add, social has always been a really big part of our way of getting our brand out there. And what's amazing is it's literally free. You can build your brand on there. You can put out your messaging. You can reach thousands and thousands of people for free. It's absolutely amazing. Something that's been quite important for us is starting on channels. LinkedIn and Twitter has been the most suitable for us, just because of what we do and where we focus on. So starting, I would say, with 1 or 2 channels and then expanding from there. Otherwise, it becomes a little bit tough to really manage your platforms well.
I think it depends a bit. Okay, so where you find the people, Google's a good place. Just Google things like, if we're talking specifically, I need to get out on social media, and you think that that's the avenue, social media agencies, and Googling that and trying to find it through that, asking people around you, connected to you. I think that is like also the easiest, because one of the other things when you engage with these other agencies, is there's going to be quite a large cost to implement. There's going to be huge costs. So you want to get away from that, and you want to, trust is a really important thing. So you'd want to connect through people. Do you know of anybody? Have you heard of anything? And through that, you'll find good connections that could help you. I would do that. I would, if you have an idea of who your customer is, one of the things that I would do is I would really think about what are the problems that my customer has, and then create, most people have a thing, catalogs. So forget about your catalog, talking about your business profile, because that's all about you. If you created a document that was more positioned to support and help your end user, your customer, in the way like 5 things that is going to definitely hurt you if you continue going down this road, something like that. That's a bit provocative. And then you go and you give that to your customer and say, what do you think about this? Do you think this will support you in any way? And then automatically you start to build that information. You start to actually connect with your ideal customer, and you start to build the information that you actually need to get to market.
I also like that. I think, as you said, the most important thing that's been good for us is to be completely authentic. So it's to put out there what you're doing, what you're working on. Be super humble about what you're putting out there. That's kind of our value as our brand. But I think the humble part of it goes quite far. And as you say, putting it out, say, what do you think of this? Does this work for you? Would it serve your business? Having that, making it more of a conversation. And I think another thing that we've done is we've also shared, small successes of what we've done as a company, where we are. If we're going to a conference, we're here, come and see us. So we're sharing our journey all the time. We're sharing what we're working on. And I think an important part is we're also sharing who we are as a team, so people can understand, this is our values, because very often people are not just buying your product, they're supporting you as an entire company. They want to see what you're about, what you believe in, and then are more inclined to explore what you actually have to offer.
I think very, very powerful sentiments there from both Crystal and Marlon. I think just to add on to that as well, I think definitely, we've seen a lot of positivity when it comes to focusing times on social media. So I would recommend at least an hour and a half if you're trying to grow. But Haley, as you said, if you don't enjoy that, if you don't like it, then it is best to source someone who can dedicate their time, focused attention on what they need to be doing, sort of what we call a community manager. So you hire a community manager and you kind of give them the posts that you want to go out. They will use relevant hashtags. They will engage with your community and literally, be the voice of your brand. And I think if it's not something that you enjoy doing, then definitely you need to find that person, like Marlon said, to Google them, go through social media agencies, or just put out a post. We've got Boss Babes of South Africa, which we could even help you with if you're interested. To just ask for people that are suitably qualified to do this kind of task. It's often a digital strategist, or someone that has a strong background in marketing that could help out with something like this. And then you can just screen them and see who's best for your brand.
I think at the beginning it was kind of coming into realization that it's not as easy as, LinkedIn or these documentaries or these wonderful movies make it seem, especially in South Africa. So I always compare building technology to building a house. You're creating an asset. That asset can be shifted and changed around, add another story later or an additional garage, but essentially you're building a house. And when you build a house, no one's going to do it for you for free, and no one's going to want to understand, your beautiful vision and goal with what you want to do with that house. So you end up struggling to find financing. You go to SA Home Loans, like, nah, yes, you want to build a house, but we're not the right place to go. So it's the same with building a tech business. I kind of realized that, yes, I've got the idea and I know how I want to execute, but no one wants to pay for this. No one's going to give me $1 million to get the people who have the experience and expertise and build the technology so we can see the model come to light. So that first portion was like the hardest to solve for. Like, how do you build technology without having any tech experience? I'm not a developer, and you have no money. So that was my mindset, and it was the wrong mindset, because what I should have asked myself was, how do I like create an environment where my service is working without me needing money? So I can actually do it without all the bells and whistles that I initially wanted. So when I'd figured that out, it actually became easier to then take the next step. So essentially what we did was, and it was advice that I got from like this guy who basically said, well, what you need is these guys, and you need these customers, and you need a means of communicating between the pharmacies and the customers. And you can do that with a telephone, right? I was like, yeah, sure. It's like, okay, cool. Can you go speak to a handful of pharmacies who would allow you to push business their way? I'm like, sure, I'm sure I can do that. And then can you find customers who'd be interested in using your service? That was a difficult part. I was like, okay, who actually would want to use it? So I printed out pamphlets and I was handing them out. Then I'd run back to the office and I'd wait for the telephone to ring. And when the telephone rang, I'd then call the pharmacist to be like, hey, we've got a customer who's looking for this, and this. How much do you charge for these things? He tells me. Then I'd call the other partners to find the best price, call the customer back, tell them the price. If they're happy with that, rush to the pharmacy, pay for it out of my own pocket, take that parcel, deliver it to that customer. They then pay me. And then I'm like, oh, snap. Okay, it works, you know? So once we had gotten enough of those moments where customers and pharmacies are getting the benefits to them, customers are seeing the benefits, it was then we had enough evidence to then approach investors to say, hey, how about you put money into this and let's automate and formalize this whole thing. And even then they said no. Even then they're like, yeah, but there's no product like this to compare it to, both domestically and internationally, so it's too much of a risk. So, you know, you have to do what you have to do. You learn some coding, you put together some rudimentary website. I ended up selling my car to build like our first bad version of our platform. It was terrible. But from there, it became easier to now show the pharmacies how it's automated, show the customers how it's automated, and to show investors how to automate. And then from there, we finally got somebody who'd take the risk. So yeah, it's I think right at the beginning, it's not going to work. It's almost like you have to tell yourself it's not going to be as simple as you're telling yourself in your head it's going to be. And secondly, whatever you think is the right way to do it, you've got to find even easier and cheaper ways to get it done, because it's not going to happen in the idealistic sense. Not unless, of course, if it is tech that you're building, you can build the tech yourself. You've already got the relationships with all the stakeholders you need. Then you're in a completely different space. We didn't have that. We had no industry expertise. We had no networks. We had no money. We had to figure it out. And I'd say temper your expectations right at the beginning. That's going to be very important.
But like some of the biggest challenges we faced, number one, sort of operating in the space that we operate in, trying to bring tech to non-tech based communities already in its own is a challenge. And that's something that we sort of stumbled upon as we were doing it. And I think that's probably one of the hardest things about being an entrepreneur, that you're building the plane as you're flying it. To use the analogy of building a house, but you're building the house as you're living in it. You're building the plane as you're flying it. And so you stumble upon some of these things as you're in market. You're like, oh crap, we didn't think of this, we didn't think of that. And that's sort of one of the hardest things about the journey. But a lot of the stuff you'll honestly only learn as you're in the trenches, as you're digging deep and you're engaging with customers and whatnot. But that's the first thing. And so from that, we learned that our very business model is in itself quite a challenge, right? Trying to digitize informal markets and so forth is in itself quite a large challenge. But the other side of the coin is it's such a rewarding job to do. It's such rewarding work to do, just seeing businesses grow, seeing people's eyes light up when you show them the other side of the coin, or you show them the possibilities for their businesses and their families and their finances if they just journeyed with you. If you just bear with me, let me show you the other end of this thing. You can sell to someone in Cape Town based from your house in Soweto. It blows people's minds. But to me and you, it sounds quite simple, right? And so the second challenge we also then encountered was this right here that I'm engaging with you on, the sort of like understanding that people aren't where you are at, that your customers are, your customers are coming from a very different background and experience to where you're coming from, and that there's a bridge there. There's a sort of a communication gap, what people sometimes call the digital divide. But our job at Metropolitan is to hold their hands and sort of walk them over that bridge so that they can see things on the other end of that bridge. And so a lot of what we do is also very education based. So we educate before we sell. And so, education has in a way sort of formed part of our sales cycle. And then I think Mpati touched on the financial aspects of trying to build a business in South Africa, trying to start something from nothing. Because I still don't have a tech background, but a very strong finance and marketing and a business background. But I don't have the tech, so I can't code my own stuff. But I can tell you something, that if you're listening to this right now and you're that kid, take that as an asset, because it gives you an edge over the guys that just bring tech and bring code to every discussion. But what people often misunderstand is that it's one thing to have an app, but how do you take it to market? How do you find the right customers? How do you manage the finances and the cash flow? That's the business element of it. But now I've got an app, right? But how do I actually make that a business?
Yeah,
if you have a business background, exactly, and that's the thing that we actually learned as you're doing this. That now I've got this platform, I have to actually go sell it and build a business around it.
Touching on what Mo said earlier, the version of our platform a year ago is very different to what it is now, and I was even looking at mock-ups that I did 3 years ago. And I can't believe how off I was on so many different assumptions. But I think it goes back to that, what's that phrase? Measure twice, cut once. Yeah. And instead of measure once, cut twice. So I think when you start anything, or when I started, you want to move fast and break things. That saying needs to stop. That move fast and break, because if you can't replace whatever you break, it doesn't serve you in any way. So you end up realizing you've got to measure twice. So you've got to do double the homework to take the first cut, only to realize you're still wrong on that assumption. So you've got to cut twice anyway. But it's better to check twice before you cut than to just check once. And that's what it's been constantly. It's put this button here, and you spend a week on one button and it doing that specific thing, only to have your client say, we don't like this. This interferes with that. And you're like, I spent so much time and money, and now you're telling me you don't even want what we just did. So it just, do your homework as much as you can. And you don't have to be an industry expert, I guess. I mean, I know nothing about healthcare besides the fact that I'm a customer. I've been a customer my whole life. I know nothing about the healthcare system. So if you can spend a lot of time with clients instead of spending time with your friends, go speak to a client. This was essentially what we had to do. I had to go speak to a pharmacy and say, this is what I want to do. I don't know how to do any of it, but if you'd let me stick around your business for a week, I'm sure I'll figure it out. And, you just watch everything that they do, everything that frustrates them, everything that excites them, everything that excites the customer or frustrates the customer. And then you kind of work out, okay, cool, this is how I need to fix that. So I definitely agree that it's too painful, this process. My dad always jokes, when I speak to my dad about all these tech challenges, he always jokes and he says, I should have gone into construction. At least we've got we've got generations and generations of construction experience. But this tech thing, also in the grand scheme of family, 9 times out of 10, a lot of us who go into technology or even starting a business, you're most likely the first one in your entire family to do it. So no one understands, no one can help or guide you. It's like something different. So he looks at me and is like, laying a brick would be much easier than this coding thing. And I've got to remind myself that these hands weren't made for bricklaying. So no thanks.
Oh my gosh, you're hilarious. With that in mind, let's bring Raif in, who actually started with the background of leading a construction company and then decided to create efficiency. So it's funny that we're talking about that. I'm wondering, Raif, what have your obstacles been in creating your product?
Well, I'd first like to thank Mpati and Mo for highlighting the construction industry because it speaks directly to our solution. So thanks for the PR, guys. But I just wanted to succinctly speak about how we started. So we started from a point different to how you guys started, where we were in construction already, but then the nature of our business was we were requesting satisfaction surveys from clients. And this is how we identified the gap in the market. And we started seeing where the inefficiencies were in the market. And I actually come from a tech background. And I then took this industry, which was, I don't need to explain to anybody what the construction industry is like. We all know there's a bad industry and thereafter you get construction. So I wanted to almost, let's say, get a rebirth of this industry. So we wanted to put what was missing in the industry. We brought efficiency to the industry, hence the company's name. So what we want to do is we've taken service providers, small SMMEs, which obviously struggle to compete with the bigger companies because they don't have the advertising spend. They don't always have the requirements. So we've then taken these panels of service providers, we then take them to market, but we position it through efficiency, which, as we all know, customers judge a book by its cover. We all say don't judge a book by its cover, but unfortunately, the reality is that we look at something and building a house. Are you going to pay a guy 100,000 Rand that rocks up with a packet that was dropped off by a taxi? Unfortunately not, because the industry is riddled with people. The hit and run. This is the hit and run industry. So when you look at someone that's positioned in a way that seems that they can handle your money, the customer has peace of mind. And in that way, the service provider gets that opportunity. So our mission is almost to get these small SMMEs to the table so they get the opportunity to service these clients and to make sure these clients get exactly what they're paying for. That's our business model in a nutshell. From a challenge, I just wanted to just explain from a challenge perspective, our point of reference for developing the solution was actually from the client. So we already knew what the problem was. Getting to the solution, the client already told us what they'd like to see. So all we did was we took the problem and we looked at what the possible solution was according to the client, and we built the solution. The challenges we had, tech-wise, we've had a bit of challenges, being that tech people are quite good at what they do, but sticking to timelines. We business people, so we believe time is money. But from a tech side, as long as the job can get done, whether it be today, tomorrow, 20 years from now, they're going to get the job done. And I think that's where the difference comes in. So being able to manage the time to market and like almost mentoring and coaching your tech team, if you can navigate that, I think you'd get to market speedily and be able to deliver before someone else comes up with that idea.
You have to surround yourself with the right people, and with people that can give you, just like with people that you can have honest conversations with and that help you sort of simplify the process. Oftentimes And I don't think it's just the tech thing. I think just generally when you're trying to start a business, that some industries are a bit more complex than others. But in the tech space, especially when you think about doing something, building an app, building a website or doing whatever in digital, you think of everything it should be doing and everything it needs to do. And then you think that that's what I need to build. I need to build this thing. It can do 10 different things. And that can be very overwhelming. Just from a thought process perspective, and obviously from a financial perspective, it's something that can obviously bankrupt. It's just not possible to start building something that 10 different things. And so one thing for me is about surrounding yourself with the right people that you can have honest conversation with and that can help you simplify your thought process. The best advice that I've ever received, was one, don't build it with all the 10 functionalities. Whatever it is that you're looking to do, find what are the one or two things, like the must-haves, right? Like the must-haves, the one or two must-have that you must do, and then build those into the platform. And everything else will build after that. And then the second thing, second best advice I ever received was, you have a business when somebody's willing to part with their hard-earned money for whatever value it is that you're bringing to them. Up until then, we just have nice ideas that could be a thing or not. But the second somebody's like, I'm going to part with my hard-earned rands to pay for whatever value it is that you're delivering to me, that's the point when you're like, okay, now I've got a business. The next problem is, how do you get the volume? So now it's about, how do I get 5 mo's, 500 mo's, 5 million mo's to part with their hard-earned rands? So always just keep that in the back of your mind on whatever that you're building. Those are, if you remember nothing else that I said, remember that.